Hi, I'm Daniel Roberts, and you're listening to the Giving Town podcast, where we share stories of hope and generosity in our wonderful community of Newberg, Oregon, and the surrounding area. In today's episode, I'm talking to Auggie Gonzales with Newberg Urgent Care and Newberg Rotary. Auggie is a well-known and beloved member of our town, and today we're going to learn more about his involvement here in Newberg. This podcast is sponsored by my real estate team, the Joyful Roberts Group, and we're a family real estate team with Premier Property Group, LLC. I make this podcast because I love this town. I love highlighting the great people like Auggie and organizations of this community like Newberg Rotary. And we also have a YouTube channel that educates people on the more real estate related aspects of living in Newberg. We've got a lot of great videos about buying homes, selling homes, Newberg tours, things like that. So if that's something you're interested in, you can check that out in our YouTube channel, which is linked in the description. But more to the point of this episode, there's a lot of great things that we talked about with Auggie. So I think you guys are going to enjoy this episode. So here it is. Well, Auggie, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm looking forward to sharing your story with our listeners. And for those of you who don't know Auggie, and if you've been in Newberg for some time, you've probably heard of Auggie, or maybe have met him at one of our Rotary meetings or at the Chamber of Commerce meetings, or if you've ever had an urgent care need and have gone to the Newberg Urgent Care. But Auggie wears a lot of different hats around town and is one of those people that just does a lot to make Newberg a better place. So first, Auggie, thank you for all you do here in our town, and I look forward to having a conversation with you today.
Well, thank you for having me here. I'm happy to share my story.
Yeah, so kind of first and foremost, what I'd say your main thing you're known for, well, I guess it depends on who the person is. You have, you're with Newberg Urgent Care, and your title there, you call yourself the CSO, which we'll get into what that means. You're very involved in the Newberg Rotary Club. You've been a past president there. You've done a lot of projects. But we also know that you're a Huskies fan, so Newberg was not always home for you. It doesn't take long to hear some joke about the Huskies either winning or losing. It depends on the year, I guess.
This is a good year for the Huskies.
So you're now well known and appreciated in Newberg, but what originally brought you here?
I was interested in looking for a great community to establish an urgent care. I had a partner who was a physician, and I have an healthcare administration background, and we searched for a couple communities, and really what we're looking for is a great community and one that was a fast-growing community. And we actually interviewed 5 different communities, and there was something about Newberg, about the feel, the friendliness, that we chose to come here. And I think a lot of that kindness, friendliness that I experience is just an extension of the history of Newberg with the Quaker and the Christian background, and that just was a good match for us. So that's why we chose to come to Newberg.
Now, when you say we, who all was involved with that at the beginning?
I had a partner who is a physician. He had 5 years of urgent care background.
Okay.
And he was quite frustrated many times when he saw something that could be done differently and better and didn't have the authority to do that. And he found it very frustrating because he had to go through a corporate administrative process. And he says, I can do that better on my own. And so we teamed up and we did something better on our own.
Yeah. Okay. Now, what got you started in urgent care to begin with? I mean, was it something since you were a kid you thought urgent care is something you wanted to start, or how did you come to decide on that?
Well, I think the history in that is through college. I was interested in social welfare, and through that I ended up doing a lot of social work in migrant clinics, one in Toppenish, Washington, which has the farm workers base, and then also at a clinic in Caldwell, Idaho. And what I realized back in the 70s is that not a lot of the clinic administrators had business backgrounds. And I says, I think that I need to pursue that. And I chose to major in healthcare administration. So I went back to the university after my undergraduate for a master's in healthcare administration. And from there, I took a 1-year residency at a hospital and worked there, was hired on 6 months later, and worked there for about 9 years. And so I have a healthcare background, which lends itself well to managing an urgent care clinic.
Gotcha. Okay. And we'll kind of come back to that in a little bit. But one of the things I wanted to spend a little bit of time discussing is your involvement with Rotary. So you're in the Newberg Rotary Club, and that's kind of how we really got to know each other. I think we first met at a Chamber of Commerce greeters event, and then really got to know each other. And you've been my mentor throughout the process of being in Rotary, which I've really appreciated getting to know you. And it only took about a year to get you on the podcast. But so Rotary is something that is really close to your heart. It doesn't take long to figure that out. Why do you think that is? What about Rotary itself is so important to you?
I think there's a couple of reasons. And I grew up in a poor situation, and even though we were poor, I saw my parents always giving to others, and of the little they had, they shared. And so sharing and giving and helping others has always been really close to my heart. And in terms of my values, Rotary has and espouses a lot of values that match with what I believe and my responsibility in terms of doing good in the world and making the world a little better. So when I learned about Rotary and its motto, service above self, I said, this is home. This is the final fit for me. So Here I am.
Yeah. Well, I've had a few people that I've interviewed that are a part of Rotary, and to everyone, Rotary means something a little bit different. And that's it's kind of a pro and a con of Rotary is that there's so much. I mean, I talked to Larry Strober, and he's involved in almost every project under the sun. Other people, there's one specific thing that it means to them. And so there's so many things that Rotary can be. You can be, I mean, there's I don't remember off the top of my head, all the various areas of interest or kind of the focus areas of Rotary. Some of them are eradicating disease, clean water. Our club specifically focuses on children and child welfare, and that itself takes a lot of forms. So the great thing is that no matter what your passion is, there's something in Rotary that you can make a bigger difference through Rotary than you can on your own through matching grants and all these kinds of things. And the other part of that that's kind of a negative is that no one knows what Rotary is all about. Because someone from the outside, maybe they got a scholarship and they say, oh, Rotary, I mean, even myself, I got a Rotary scholarship, but I had no idea really what it meant or what Rotary was about. And honestly, I got involved in Rotary from more of a networking perspective, thinking, okay, well, it's a service organization and networking, and I like being generous when I can, and I like service, and it's also a way to meet new people, but really knowing nothing about what it was about. So one of the things I wanted to ask you is just to share from your perspective what Rotary means and maybe describe it to someone who's never heard of it before, which can be kind of tough when you've been in it for so long. It kind of becomes its own meaning to you, but many people listening to this they've heard of Rotary, but maybe they're not involved with it or don't know why it would be a benefit to them.
So I learned that Rotary was a social service organization, and social service means that it's serving the community, serving the world, and that's exactly what Rotary does, and I was very interested in that aspect. And so if I were to try to describe Rotary to someone new like myself, I would focus on the fact that it is a social service organization, and that you have a lot of business leaders, and these are movers and shakers in the community that are giving of themselves, giving back to the community, and making the community better. So I think that's what I would say that to me, and I think I'd want to join Rotary.
Yeah, Yeah. I mean, it is a way to get to know a lot of people that most of the people I've gotten to know through Rotary are, I mean, the motto service above self, they really espouse that. They're very, I mean, that's just who they are. So you would never know their position in the community, or sometimes you get to know like, oh, that's who you are. Or like, wow, that's what you've been involved with. And you would just never know because people are so down to earth and like they're not concerned about a title or position or who makes more money or any of that stuff. It's, hey, we're all here to do the same thing. And it doesn't matter if you're brand new starting out or if you were one of the most prominent business people in the town. It's kind of a level playing field in some ways. And that's what I've appreciated, is recognizing everyone is, when you get down to it, everyone's just a person, and everyone's, they've got their quirks, they've got their pros and cons, just like anyone else. And it's a fun opportunity to, if you come in with that mindset and can allow yourself to not be intimidated. It's someone like me, I didn't really know who was who, so I just, I kind of met everyone equally, and then later found out, oh, wow, that person has been really successful or whatever, but it ultimately doesn't really matter that much.
I think once you get involved in Rotary, and again, just on equal level, I think one of the things that you really learn and understand, and this is what was my experience, is that Rotary provides great leverage. There's only so much you as an individual can do, but with Rotary behind you, and Rotary is international, and it's well known, well respected, and it allows you to leverage whatever service you're providing to provide a much greater service to those that you're providing service to.
Can you give an example of how that works? Because what does leverage mean? Some might be wondering.
Well, I'll give you a good example. I'm involved in the Rotary Guatemala project, and we are serving individuals in 2 mountain villages in Guatemala, right above Antigua. And when we first arrived, well, first off, there was a lot of hesitation to accept people from the outside, especially foreigners, and I would even say especially Americans. But once they knew that we were part of Rotary, we were received with open arms, and that really impressed me. And that is leverage. You don't have to go in and develop trust. The name of Rotary, exudes trust, and that really helps you to be a lot more efficient in doing whatever work you're doing.
Yeah. Can you also talk, because when I think of leverage, I think of the matching grants, and that can be pretty powerful, especially the levels of matching that can happen. Can you give an example of a time you've seen a matching grant do far more than what just an individual donation could have done?
Sure, and I'll use the example of Guatemala again, is that the work that we had to do there, we had to buy a lot of equipment, and so we applied for a grant, and we were able to take $20,000, and it was matched by the district and also by Rotary International, such that we were able to come up with close to about $50,000 of equipment and supplies that we needed to get us started. And all of that was made possible, again, through leverage. Our club had a certain amount, the district provided a matching amount, and then also International provided a matching amount. So it's like, you can quadruple your dollar going through the Rotary channels.
Yeah. And that's something too. I think even if an individual is wealthy and say, oh, I don't need matching grants, I've got a lot of money to give. Well, no matter how much money you give, if it can be tripled or quadrupled or whatever it might be, because there's even outside donors that will then, I think that, if I might be speaking incorrectly, but I think it was the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, certain things they partnered with so that even they would match, and then in addition to the district and international matches, and maybe it was a different foundation, but I thought there's a certain project that they put their own matching funds towards, which may be irrelevant because they do so much anyway. But things like that, where you can have such a greater impact, And they're not just going to go match anyone, but organizations like that, when they know Rotary's behind something, they know that their dollar is going to actually be doing something effective.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that we have a really good example. We have a member who inherited, her husband passed away, and he had been a major figure in Rotary in his community, and she wanted to donate, a lot of her funds that she had available back to Rotary. And so one of the things that she would always inquire was, how much grant money are you using? And if you weren't using any grant money, the financial support wasn't necessarily going to come your way.
Interesting.
So I really appreciated and respected that, because she says, if I'm going to put $1 in, I want that dollar to go out as $4 worth of service.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think that's, someone might say that's stingy, but I think that's very practical and prudent. Yeah, exactly. And so I think we can kind of learn from that. But if you're a wealthy individual and want to make a difference, then Rotary is probably going to give you the best impact for your dollar. So you mentioned the Guatemala project, but you've also been involved in other projects. So could you just share about some of your favorite projects, maybe just starting with that one, what that project actually is and the impact you've seen from it?
Well, let me share some of the other projects that I have been in. These are more local ones, and we do an annual fundraiser, the Rotary auction, and it's always important for us to be a part of that, because that's the opportunity that we get to raise money that goes into the foundation that supports all of the youth services programs here in the community. So that's always a fun event and a great opportunity for us to generate dollars to give back to our community. One of the really fun ones that I was involved in was the Rotodent project. And in the early years, what they would do is recruit Rotarians to come in on a Saturday and actually build a Rotodent unit.
Okay.
And through that process, I was able to involve 3 of my oldest children. One is a dentist now, the other is a dental hygienist, and the third one wanted to be a dentist, and he actually was the president of the dental group at the University of Oregon. However, he sustained an injury to his dominant hand that precluded him from going into dentistry. But again, all of them had that experience in the Rotodent builds, and that was just a great opportunity for people from the outside, especially youth, to get involved and learn about dentistry in a different way.
Yeah. Now, the name implies that Rotodent has something to do with dental, but can you describe what a Rotodent unit is?
Rotodent unit is a self-sustaining piece of equipment that allows dentists to provide dentistry in places where electricity is not available. We use power generators and to provide the electrical support that we need. So it provides you a vehicle to provide services where you're not going to see them, where they're not available because they're so remote.
Right. And one of the significant things about that too is these Rotodent units were actually designed and built by ADEC. So they have their own Rotodent team, correct? So can you describe how that relationship happened?
Well, I think early on, and Ken Austin was involved in the development of the Rotodent. He had a contract with either the Army or the Navy, but to provide a unit that could be used out in the field. And he evolved that to the units that we use in the field now. And he also had made a promise that he was going to build a chair because the chairs that we were using weighed about 85 pounds and were oversized and expensive to haul to remote areas. And he came up with a great design of a wooden chair. And as a matter of fact, we took the alpha and beta chairs and tested them out in the fields to refine the design. And these new chairs are collapsible. You can put them together in about 3 minutes, and they weigh less than 24 pounds, and they're a very small, compact size. So it was just a wonderful treasure that we have been able to take advantage of, that are products by Ken Austin from ADEC.
Yeah, and that legacy has somewhat been... COVID changed some things, but it's starting back up again from what we understand. There's going to be more Rotodent units and chairs being built, because that's also, and I don't know if we talked about this, but the proceeds from that are actually a significant source of income both to the morning Rotary Club and the noon Rotary Club, right?
Well, initially there was a major portion of that Ken Austin wanted to go back to the Rotary clubs, and there were 3 clubs that were recipients of the sales of Rotodent equipment, and it was our Noon Rotary Club, the Early Bird Rotary Club, and a Rotary Club in Austria that provided handpieces. And so we are recipients of those funds. However, over the course of time, having Rotarians do a Rotodent build creates an issue with quality control. And so what they ended up having to do was to almost rebuild some of these units. So they decided it would be best for them to build these units to guarantee greater success of operation in their facilities. And in order to do that, the first $1,000 from the sales goes back to the production, and then everything above $100,000 will be split between these Rotary clubs.
Okay, so the first $100,000 goes back.
Correct.
Okay, and then above that, the proceeds go as a donation. Okay.
And we might be surprised. I know at the height of the sales of the Rotodent units, our club, the maximum that we received was $150,000, and you can do a lot of great services.
And that's
here
a lot
in the
of that's a lot of auctions to get $150,000.
Yes, it really is. So it was just a great boon to our Rotary clubs.
Yeah. So and there's kind of work in the background of trying to get that back up and going, because I know it's been a kind of an up and down process at times. But anyway, so that's the Rotodent project. What are some of the other projects?
Well, the Guatemala project is, one of the major ones. And I had listened to a presentation at our club, and it was by Dr. Alan Methman, who passed this past year, and Leroy Benham, who is a very well-known community volunteer and mentor and business person. And I heard their story, and I just thought that was wonderful. And I said, I really want to be involved in that. And fast forward a year, they were presenting again, and I heard myself say, oh, I want to be a part of that. And I said, wait a minute here. You said that last year. You need to do something different. And to advance, my interest, I changed my declaration. And I says, that's a great program. I am going to be involved in that. And I joined the team the following year. And that was a great opportunity, because from that, our club decided that they wanted to do something out in international service. And so Leroy Bannon and myself, we did a survey of several countries of where we could provide a project. And the goal was to serve in an area where Rotarians from our club could have hands-on experience, and also that it would be affordable, because the cost of getting there and staying there for that week would come out of their pockets. So we wanted to be as economically feasible as possible. And the two countries that came to the top of the list were Mexico and Guatemala. And we decided to choose Guatemala because our dollar could go a lot further there. We could provide a much greater service. And the rest is just history.
Yeah. So what I should say that again, what is an example of what that project looked like?
Well, initially, what it looked like was just a dental clinic.
Okay.
And in the early years...
And that was using these rotodent units?
Correct, using the rotodent units. Alan Methvin was the primary dentist, and he had a couple of buddies. He had a dentist friend from the University of Michigan, and then there also was a local dentist from the Portland area. So basically we had 3 dentists, and we had 3 rotodent units. And so we provided services. And in the early years, because the people in the villages had never received dental services, I would say 95% of the work that we did was extractions. However, once the club decided that we wanted to get involved in a project, one of the Rotarians said, we need to develop a model. And our model is going to be to go back to the same villages for 5 years and help bring them out of poverty. Well, we did that for 5 years, and we realized we hadn't pulled them out of poverty, so we signed up for another 5 years.
Okay.
And at any rate, when we extended the work that we were doing, we evolved. And when you go and you serve in a third world country, you see the need and you realize that it's greater than just dentistry. And so what we quickly did is that we started a water project so the villagers would be able to have clean water, which enhances their health. From there, we realized that they were living in bamboo huts with tin roofs and an open fire pit. So we started a construction project, and we realized that a lot of the villages had no electricity. So we started an electrical project to bring electricity to the villages. And we evolved from there to start an education program. And the first project that we did is a couple Rotarians, they sponsored an individual from the village for his whole college career so that he could come back as a certified teacher and teach in that village. And he agreed to that arrangement and came back, and we have supported that program since its inception. And when we first went to this village, it was one classroom, and now it's a huge campus, and it's just amazing. And I think education is a key to success to bring any village out of poverty. So that's one of the areas that, even though we provide financial support, I can see the greatest benefit. And the last project that we were involved in was microbanking, and we funded 13 women. We provided them with a sum so they can go out and start a business, generate profits. We'd come back in a year, and they would pay their loan back to us.
Gotcha.
So that was, and I tell you that the pride that it created in these women, it was just phenomenal.
Yeah.
And it also increased a lot of their community involvement and participation to help their community. So it was, it had a lot of benefits in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, far beyond just dental work, it
Right.
seems. And imagine you go, and something that I've heard, and I haven't been on a project like that, but one of the things I've heard is ultimately it has to become something that is self-sustaining, which is much more of a mind work thing, that the village themselves has to do a lot of the work, because an outsider can come in and then leave and then be like, did anything even happen? But once you start getting the involvement of the villagers, it sounds like that's when things really, obviously you provided opportunities, but it seems like that's kind of when the major changes started happening, is when they started having their own buy-in. Is that true?
That is true. And part of our model, when we decided to go back to the same villages, there were a couple of benefits that we realized and enjoyed. And I think one of the first things that we decided that we would do is that we didn't want to give them a fish to eat. We wanted to teach them how to fish so they could become self-sustaining. The other is that what we do there as volunteers, we feel that we are giving of ourselves. But I tell you that when people go and they come back, they come back as the biggest receiver, not
Yeah.
not in terms of what they've given, it's because of their experience. It's life-changing. And the third thing that we realized was that when you go back to the same villages, you get to know them. They get to know you, and you develop lifetime experiences and relationships. And I think that was probably one of the strongest aspects of the project there, was the relationships that we had with the villagers.
Yeah.
It was great.
And I'm trying to think if we're missing any of the other projects, or if there's more to share on that one.
Well, I think the other aspect of the project is that, we say we have a project in Guatemala, but it's not just a project, it's a collaboration of labor. And we partnered with the Rotary Club in Antigua, so they would do a lot of work for us, and a lot of it was preparatory work, so that when we went and got there, on the ground, we would start running. We also, in the early years, we partnered with a nonprofit organization, and this was an organization that basically served quadriplegics, and we would use some of them as volunteers, and also at the end of our week, we always went to their organization and provided all of their participants with free dental work, which they really needed. So, and I have to say, with the dental service too, is that it evolved. Like I said, the first couple of years, maybe 5 years, major portion of the work that we did were extractions, and we started to see, the fruits of our labor, in that we would come back and say, okay, now we're going to do a lot more fillings. And we did that for, several more years, and then we realized that we were beyond that. Those percentages were much smaller, and the greater requirement was for cleaning. Yeah. And so in that recognition, we realized we needed more dental hygienists. So and it's just a coincidence that my son was in the dental hygiene program at Pacific, so I recruited him to recruit students to help us in that process. And we've had a steady stream of dental hygienists help us from Pacific.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, and I also have to really praise the team that we have, the dental dentists. And when we first started, I had a son who was in the dental program at OHSU, and Alan Methvin said, Augie, you should bring your son. He'll have a great experience. I'll mentor him, and he's going to be, way ahead of the rest of the dental students. And so I said, well, great. Let me ask him. And so I asked my son Ben if he would be willing to participate. And he really didn't know what he would be getting into, and he also had to make special arrangements through the school. And so he said, well, let me think about it, Dad. 2 weeks later, he came back and he says, I'll do it. And I said, well, I want you to have a really good experience, and I think one of the best ways to do that is for you to invite one of your friends from the dental school. And he did. And these two individuals had such a great experience, went back, shared with the school, the professors. The following year, they came back and 2 more students.
Oh, wow.
And that repeated. Every year, we would add 2 more students. We finally reached a core of 8 dentists, because they would continue, once they graduate, they would continue to come back as dentists.
Okay.
And then we still had dental students from OHSU. So it was a great opportunity for us to tie into a great resource of dentists. But I want to get credit to those original 8, because they continued to come back. And I think if you were to ask them why they do it, a lot of it has to do is, they're interested in giving, and the relationships that we develop there.
Yeah.
They really appreciate that.
Yeah. Now, I know there's also a lot of Newberg, and for the sake of time, can you briefly discuss some of the projects that have been done by our club that you've been involved with specifically here in town?
Well, I know I also sit on the Noon Rotary Club Foundation, and I was a member of that for about 5 years, and when the treasurer left, I assumed her position. So I see a lot of the money that we approve and send out, and some examples of that are, the Boys Club, the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts, and one of the major contributions are Rotary scholarships. Mm-hmm. We provide $50,000 in first-year scholarships to Newberg and local area students, which is a major portion of our budget. But we also support like the high school resource room that provides whatever needs students have. They can go there and receive that item, and now they're even providing counseling. So it's just a great service to students in need. We also have done a lot of joint projects, like with George Fox and their cleanup community day. We have supported many of the athletic programs, and a lot of times we'll get the school to say, hey, we need a new turf, or we need new wrestling mats, and so we'll fund a lot of those. But primarily what we want to do is provide financial support to areas of service, and so that's our primary focus.
Yeah. And then, so that's a lot of the maybe behind the scenes work, a lot of the community service work you do, but I wanted to come back briefly and touch on the urgent care side of things. So you kind of talked about how you got started, and now with the context of everything you do with the community, you mentioned that your title is CSO, and most people maybe either just take that for what it is, but some might be wondering, well, what is CSO, and why do you call yourself that? So what is CSO?
Well, early on I realized that in order for us to be successful, that we needed to focus on customer service, and really that was one of the values that I came to Rotary with, and I wanted to continue that in the urgent care. So my belief is that traditionally you have a hierarchy in organizations. It's like a pyramid. Mm-hmm. And my philosophy is that, here you have the top CEO, in my case, CSO, and that stands for Chief Servant Officer. In order for me to serve my team, I take the organizational structure and I tip it upside down. So I'm now on the bottom, and I'm there to help and support all the employees to provide the best service that we can. And by doing that, we have a great urgent care providing healthcare services to our community.
And in your tagline on your site, it says friendly healthcare for the whole family. So what makes it friendly versus what some might expect?
Well, yeah, I think in the early years, we wanted to use a tag that would entice people to come in, because first off, a lot of people, especially kids, they don't want to go see the doctor. They don't want to go to the clinic. And so we wanted to, in our situation, we wanted to market to young mothers. And we wanted to provide a place of refuge and a place that they felt and trusted that they could be safe to share with us their needs, and we could address those needs. So we wanted to really emphasize that not only were we professional, but we were friendly, that you could talk to us, we would listen, and we would meet your needs. And so that's really where that friendliness portion comes in. And again, our range of services is from pediatric all the way to geriatric. And really, that's the whole family. So that's kind of how our tagline, friendly healthcare for the whole family, came about, is what our focus was going to be in this community.
Okay. Now, I think some people have a misconception about what urgent care actually is versus maybe an emergency room visit. Can you maybe clarify what the difference is?
Sure. Let me give a little history on this. Is that when we came to Newberg and decided to open up a clinic, there were 14 independent physicians who had practices, and the hospital was a community hospital. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to augment the healthcare services that were in this community. And over the years, a lot of those physicians have retired or they've been moved out. And I remember the day when one of the last primary care physicians closed his office, and I was having a conversation with one of the administrators from the hospital saying, my point was that this was a real sad day with the last physician who's closing up his doors. And he said to me, well, there's still you and there's still the hospital. And I said, yes. However, we are urgent care. We're not primary care, and there's a huge difference. And I think it's important for people also to understand is that urgent care is service that you can receive, and it's episodic. It's when you need it now. And again, we kind of overlap with the emergency room from the standpoint is that we can do a lot lower level emergency services. For example, a fracture, a laceration repair. We can do that, and we can do it at anywhere from 3 to 10 times less the cost. So it's a great option. So I tell people that urgent care is where you can come to get healthcare services without an appointment on the day that you need it. And anything that a primary care physician can provide you, we can do that. In addition, we have an EKG, we have an X-ray, and we have a lab so that we can provide you with a quick diagnosis of your condition.
Yeah. So a car crash where you're maybe needing something more than some quick repairs might be emergency room visit, but anything less than that.
Yes. Well, what we say is that if you have a life-threatening condition, you need to, and we don't even say go to the emergency, we say call 911 because the emergency personnel can get to you faster than you can get to the hospital. Yes, anything that's life-threatening would be inappropriate for urgent care. Now, I have to tell you that we still get a lot of people who are in denial and will show up at our clinic with the beginning of a heart attack. And so what we do is we'll stabilize them, and we'll call the hospital, and we'll get call 911, and we'll get emergency transport directly to the hospital so that they can receive the services that they need now. Well, so it's a good collaboration between the hospital and urgent care from that aspect too, to serve the community.
I feel like I would probably be one of those people. No, it's not that bad. It's like, no, you should probably call.
There are a lot of people like that.
Yeah.
Well, you don't know, and what you don't know, you have to experience. Sure. And so you'll learn.
Yeah. So, what is your favorite part about being the kind of main urgent care provider in Newberg?
Well, what I really like is the fact that we provide an alternative. Is that right now you have the Providence Primary Care Physician Group, and there's no other option, and we provide that option on an episodic basis. But it would be, I think it's important to have competition. It's important for us to have choices. And I think when you have choices, you're going to choose what's best for you for your situation.
Yeah. Well, Auggie, I have one more question that I've begun asking everyone, and that is, given your time here and your involvement with the community, what gives you hope for the future of Newberg?
Yeah, that's a tough question, especially given what's gone on over the last year and a half. And let me say that when Denise Bacon's she was starting a kindness campaign, she interviewed me, and one of the things that I shared with her was the fact that one of the reasons that I came to this community was because of the feel, the kindness, and the friendliness. That drew me to this community. And while a lot of things negatively were going on in the community, and the reason why she was starting this campaign of kindness, I said, I think there are a lot of business people that overtly are not coming to this community because of that. And so I see the seeds that Denise has planted, and I also look and I see there are still a lot of key individuals that I think are responsible for what the community was like. Mm-hmm. And because of that, I hold hope, and I know that a lot of those individuals have mentors, and I believe that those that are coming up the ranks are going to bring us back into a community that is extremely friendly, and I have hope for that.
Yeah. Now, I know we as a community are going through a major transition. I mean, just through politically, when there's a clash politically, then we have to figure out, well, how do we, and that was the whole point of what Denise, one of the main things that she was trying to do is, well, what do you do when you disagree? And there's other movements and other projects happening about that. But similarly, I have hope as well. I think it will, it'll be interesting to see what it's like, but I know that the core of our community is one. I mean, just the fact that there are so many organizations that have kind of come into being over the past couple of years shows that there are a lot of people that are committed to, who I think we really are at a core. So I would be right there with you, agreeing with that.
Well, sometimes all we need is one, and from that, you grow.
Yeah. Well, and Denise's legacy will carry on. I'm sure we'll miss her, but I think we'll kind of rally around her cause.
And I think there are a lot of people that she touched, and they will live out her legacy of kindness and just service to those that are in highest risk and in greatest need. I believe that too, and I have hope for that.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Auggie, so much. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for all you do here in our community. It's been great talking to you.
Well, thank you for this opportunity, and I'm always happy to share. And if anybody is interested in learning more about Rotary or Newberg Urgent Care or Guatemala Project, I'm just down the road.
How can people get a hold of you?
You can reach me at Newberg Urgent Care. Our phone number is 503-537-9600. And then we also have a website. It's a Newberg Urgent Care. So you can look us up there. And but I would invite you to come see us because I think you'll have a better perspective and understanding of what we do if you actually see our facility.
Can someone come visit without having an urgent care need, or do they need to get in a tussle first?
If a lot of times people will want to interview us before they'll come see us, and I invite that too.
Okay.
You don't have to make a decision before you come, and sometimes there might be situations where we talk you out of seeing us. So we really are looking out for your best interests.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you so much. It's been great.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Giving Town podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider sharing it with a friend who you think might benefit from hearing it. While more and more people are continuing to hear about this podcast, I still need your help to spread the message about all the people and organizations that make Newberg so great. Well, thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you in the next episode.